No one saved me a seat at the family dinner. It's just a celebration of success, my sister said. So I ordered pizza, ate alone and watched myself on national news. The next morning, my phone couldn't stop buzzing. I never thought I'd be writing this story, but after everything that happened last weekend, I need to get it off my chest. Some of you might have seen me on the news, but you don't know the full story. Trust me, it's worth the read. My name is Sarah, and I'm 28 years old. I work as a research scientist for a biotech company in San Diego. For the past 4 years, I've been part of a team developing a groundbreaking treatment for a rare childhood disease called Batten syndrome. It's been my life's work, 16-hour days, missed holidays, canceled dates, the whole shebang. But it was worth it because we were making a real difference. My family has never really understood my career. My parents, Linda and Robert, are both retired teachers who think anything more complex than a high school chemistry class is showing off. My older sister Emma works in marketing for a local car dealership and has always been the golden child. She's married to Dave, has 2 kids, and lives the suburban dream that my parents always wanted for both of us. Emma has always been competitive with me, but it got worse after I got my PhD. She'd make little comments about how I was too smart for my own good or probably too busy with my fancy job to care about family. The thing is, I did care about family. I showed up to every birthday party, every school play, every graduation. I just happened to also be passionate about my work. 3 weeks ago, everything changed for me professionally. Our research team achieved a major breakthrough. We successfully completed phase 2 clinical trials, and the results were incredible. Kids who had been deteriorating rapidly were stabilizing, some even improving. The FDA fast-tracked our application for phase 3 trials, and the NIH had been quietly reviewing our data for potential additional funding support. It was the kind of news that makes you cry happy tears in the lab bathroom. The story got picked up by a few medical journals, then some science blogs, and eventually made its way to local news. Nothing huge, but enough that people in my field were talking about it. I was proud, really proud, but I tried to stay humble about it. I called my parents to share the news, thinking they'd be excited. "That's nice, honey," Mom said in that tone she uses when she's half listening. "Emma just got promoted to senior marketing coordinator. We're so proud of her." I felt that familiar sting but pushed it down. This was bigger than a promotion, but I didn't want to make it a competition. "That's great about Emma. But Mom, this treatment could help save children's lives. I'm sure it's very important to you, dear. Oh, your father's calling me for dinner." That should have been my first warning sign. A few days later, Emma called me. She was unusually cheerful, which always made me suspicious. "Sarah, I heard about your little science project making the news. That's so cute." "It's not a little project, Emma. We're talking about a treatment that could help kids with a fatal disease." Right. Well, speaking of achievements, Dave and I wanted to invite the family over for dinner this Saturday. We're celebrating my promotion, and I thought it would be nice to have everyone together. I was touched that she was including me. "That sounds wonderful. What time should I come over?" "Oh, 6:30. Just bring yourself. I've got everything covered." "Are you sure? I could bring dessert or wine or..." "Nope, just yourself. See you Saturday." Saturday rolled around, and I was actually excited. I'd been working so many late nights that a family dinner sounded perfect. I dressed nicely but not too formally, brought a bottle of Emma's favorite wine anyway, and drove to her house in the suburbs. When I pulled up, I could see through the big front windows that the dining room was full of people. Emma and Dave were there, obviously, along with my parents, Dave's parents, Emma's kids, and what looked like several other couples I didn't recognize. The table was beautifully set with Emma's wedding china and fancy cloth napkins. I knocked on the front door, and Dave answered with a big smile. "Sarah. Great to see you. Come on in." I walked into the dining room, wine bottle in hand, and immediately felt something was off. Everyone was already seated around the table. Every single chair was occupied. I stood there for a moment, looking around confused. Where should I sit?" Emma looked up from her spot at the head of the table, and I swear there was a flash of something in her eyes. Not surprise, but satisfaction. "Oh gosh, Sarah. I totally miscounted the chairs. We have exactly enough for everyone who RSVP'd. But you invited me. I'm here." "I know, and I'm so glad you came. You can just grab a chair from the kitchen." I looked toward the kitchen and saw a folding chair leaning against the counter. A cheap, metal folding chair that would put me about 6 inches lower than everyone else at the table. "Emma, you knew I was coming? You called and invited me yourself." She shrugged, that fake innocent expression she'd perfected in childhood. "I guess I forgot to count you when I was planning. It's not a big deal, right? It's just a chair." My parents were sitting to Emma's right, and they were both studiously avoiding eye contact with me. Dave's parents, who I'd met maybe 3 times, looked uncomfortable. The other couples, who I now realize were Emma's work friends, were trying to pretend they weren't witnessing this awkward family moment. Actually, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, I think I'll pass on dinner. Congratulations on your promotion, Emma. I set the wine bottle on the counter and headed for the door. Sarah, don't be dramatic, Emma called after me. It's just a celebration of success. Some of us have real achievements to celebrate. That stopped me cold. I turned around, and everyone at the table was staring now. Real achievements? I repeated. Well, you know. Things that actually matter to people. Not everyone can relate to your little lab experiments. The room was dead silent. Even Emma's kids had stopped chattering. I could have said a lot of things in that moment. I could have listed my degrees, my publications, the fact that the little lab experiments might save children's lives. I could have pointed out that I'd never once made her feel small about her work, even when she was struggling to sell cars during the recession. I could have asked my parents why they were sitting there saying nothing while their daughter humiliated their other daughter. Instead, I just said, enjoy your dinner. I drove home in a weird state of shock. It wasn't just that Emma had been cruel, though she had been. It was that my parents had sat there and watched it happen. They had watched their daughter deliberately exclude their other daughter, and they had said nothing. When I got to my apartment, I was too wound up to be hungry, but I ordered a pizza anyway. Comfort food seemed appropriate. While I waited for delivery, I poured myself a glass of wine and tried to process what had just happened. That's when my phone rang. It was my friend and colleague, Dr. Marcus Chen, who had been the lead researcher on our project. Sarah, are you watching Channel 7 News? No, why? Turn it on. Now. I grabbed the remote and flipped to Channel 7. The weekend anchor was mid-sentence. Local research team's groundbreaking work on Batten syndrome treatment has caught the attention of the National Institutes of Health. And then my face filled the screen. It was footage from a press conference our company had held the week before. I was standing at a podium, explaining our research results to a room full of reporters and medical professionals. The implications of this breakthrough cannot be overstated, my voice was saying from the TV. For families dealing with Batten syndrome, this represents hope where there previously was none. The anchor came back on screen. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a San Diego native, has been leading the research team that developed this promising treatment. In a press release issued Friday afternoon, the NIH announced that they're providing substantial additional funding to accelerate the final phase of clinical trials. I nearly dropped my wine glass. NIH funding? This was huge. This was bigger than huge. My phone was ringing again. Marcus. Did you know about the NIH announcement? He asked. No. When did this happen? Apparently, they've been reviewing our Phase 2 data for weeks. The announcement went out in a press release Friday afternoon, but the news stations just picked it up tonight. Sarah, this is incredible. Do you know what this means? I did know what it meant. NIH funding would accelerate our timeline by at least 18 months. It meant national attention for our research. It meant that kids with Batten syndrome would have access to treatment sooner than we'd ever dreamed possible. I can't believe this is happening, I said. Believe it. Oh, and Sarah? I just got off the phone with a CNN producer. They want to interview you Monday morning. Something about young scientists making breakthrough discoveries. After I hung up with Marcus, I sat on my couch with my pizza and watched myself on the news 2 more times. The story was spreading. Channel 7 was rerunning the segment, and I could see notifications popping up on my phone from Twitter and LinkedIn. I thought about Emma's words, real achievements and things that actually matter to people. The irony was so perfect it almost hurt. As I scrolled through my phone, I started seeing the story picked up by other local stations. Channel 3 had done their own segment, interviewing Dr. Patricia Williams, a pediatric neurologist at Children's Hospital who specialized in Batten syndrome. She was practically glowing as she talked about our research. What Dr. Mitchell and her team have accomplished represents a paradigm shift in how we approach rare pediatric diseases, she said to the camera. For families dealing with Batten syndrome, this isn't just medical news, it's a miracle. A miracle. I set down my pizza slice and really let that sink in. While I was sitting in Emma's kitchen looking at a folding chair, families across the country were learning that their children might have a chance at life. My laptop was still open on the coffee table, so I decided to check my work email. Big mistake. My inbox was flooded. Colleagues from around the world, researchers I'd only read about in journals, patient advocacy groups, and, this made my breath catch, families. The first email was from a mother in Portland named Jennifer. Dr. Mitchell, I don't know if you'll read this, but I had to try. My son David was diagnosed with Batten syndrome when he was 6. He's 9 now, and we've been told to prepare for the worst. But I just saw you on the news, and for the first time in 3 years, I'm allowing myself to hope. Thank you for dedicating your life to saving children like my David. You are a hero. I was crying again. Hero. This woman called me a hero, and 3 hours ago my own sister had made me feel like an inconvenience. The next email was from a grandfather in Texas. My granddaughter Lucy has Batten syndrome. She just turned 7. When your story came on the news tonight, my daughter called me crying, but for the first time, they were happy tears. We've been watching Lucy slip away from us, but maybe now she has a chance. God bless you and your work. Email after email, all variations of the same theme. Families who had been living in the shadow of their children's terminal diagnoses, suddenly seeing light. I read them all, crying into my pizza. There was one from a teenage girl named Ashley who had juvenile Batten syndrome. Dr. Mitchell, I'm 16 and I have juvenile Batten syndrome. Most people with my type don't live past their early 20s. I was trying to decide if I should even bother applying to colleges, but after seeing your interview, I'm filling out my applications tonight. Thank you for giving me a reason to plan for a future. That one broke me completely. I sat there sobbing on my couch, pizza forgotten, overwhelmed by the weight of what we'd accomplished and what it meant to real people. Around 10 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from my college roommate, Jessica, who lived in Chicago. Sarah. Just saw you on the news. You're famous. So proud of you. Then another from my graduate school advisor, Dr. Reynolds. Sarah, just watched your interview. Extraordinary work. You should be very proud. My high school chemistry teacher, Mr. Patterson, had somehow found my number. Sarah Mitchell, I always knew you'd change the world. Congratulations on this incredible breakthrough. The messages kept coming. Friends, former classmates, professors, even my landlord who had apparently seen the story and connected it to his tenant. My phone was buzzing constantly. But still nothing from my family. I tried to tell myself they probably hadn't seen it yet. It was Saturday night, maybe they were busy. Maybe they didn't watch the news. Maybe they'd see it tomorrow and call then. But deep down, I knew they'd seen it. In today's world, someone would have tagged them on Facebook or sent them the link. They'd seen it, and they were staying quiet. That hurt worse than Emma's dinner party humiliation. Around 11 p.m., I decided to check social media properly. I'd been tagged in dozens of posts. The story had been shared hundreds of times on Facebook. On Twitter, people were using hashtags like #BattenBreakthrough and #MedicalMiracle. But what really got to me were the posts from other scientists. Researchers I'd admired for years were sharing the story and commenting on the significance of our work. Dr. Amanda Rodriguez from Stanford called it groundbreaking research that will save countless lives. Dr. Stephen Chen from Johns Hopkins wrote, "This is why we do science, to give hope where there was none." The validation from my peers was overwhelming. These were people who understood the long hours, the failed experiments, the grants that didn't come through, the pressure to publish or perish. They knew what it took to achieve something like this, and they were celebrating with me. I scrolled through the comments on the news station's Facebook post. Most were positive, but there were a few that made me pause. Typical media hype. Probably won't amount to anything. How much is this miracle cure going to cost regular families? Another overpaid scientist getting attention for doing their job. Those stung, but they were vastly outnumbered by comments like, "My nephew has Batten syndrome. This gives our family so much hope. Thank you, Dr. Mitchell, for your dedication to helping children. This is what real heroes look like." I closed my laptop and finished my pizza in contemplative silence. The day had been such a whirlwind of emotions, the humiliation at Emma's dinner, the shock of the news coverage, the overwhelming response from families and colleagues. I felt like I was living in someone else's life. My phone rang again. This time it was Dr. Sarah Kim, a researcher at the University of Washington who'd been working on a different approach to treating Batten syndrome. "Sarah, I had to call. What you've accomplished is incredible. Our approaches are complementary. Have you considered the possibility of combination therapy?" We talked for an hour about the potential for combining our research approaches. She was brilliant, and the conversation left me even more excited about the future of our work. After we hung up, I realized something had shifted. Earlier in the evening, I'd been focused on my family's rejection and my own hurt feelings. But talking to Dr. Kim, reading the emails from families, seeing the response from the scientific community, it reminded me why I'd chosen this career in the first place. It wasn't for recognition or awards or even to prove anything to my family. It was for Ashley, who was filling out college applications despite her diagnosis. It was for David and Lucy and all the other children whose families were allowing themselves to hope for the first time in years. That realization didn't make Emma's cruelty hurt less, but it put it in perspective. My worth as a person and as a scientist wasn't determined by whether my family understood or appreciated my work. It was determined by the impact I could have on the world. I didn't call my family that night. I figured they'd reach out when they saw the news. My pizza was excellent, by the way. Sometimes the best meals are the ones you eat alone. Sunday morning came early. I was up at 5 a.m. for the CNN interview, which was being conducted via video call from a local studio. The producer had briefed me on the questions Friday afternoon, but I was still nervous. National television was a big step up from local news. The interview went well. The anchor, Maria Santos, was genuinely interested in the research and asked thoughtful questions about the implications for children with rare diseases. She also asked about my background and what had inspired me to go into research. My parents are both teachers, I found myself saying. They taught me that the most important work is the work that helps other people learn and grow. I just took that lesson into the lab. It felt good to honor them, even after everything that had happened the night before. After the interview, I grabbed coffee and headed home, feeling accomplished but exhausted. The CNN segment was scheduled to air during their Sunday morning programming, which meant it would reach millions of people. That's when my phone started buzzing. It started with text messages from colleagues and friends who had seen the CNN interview. Then calls from former professors, medical journalists, and research institutions. LinkedIn notifications were coming in every few minutes. Twitter mentions. Facebook messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. But nothing from my family. The silence from them was deafening. I kept checking my phone, thinking maybe I'd missed a call or text. But no. Radio silence from the people who should have been the first to congratulate me. Around 9 a.m., my phone rang with what I hoped might be my parents, but it was Dr. Elizabeth Warren, not the senator, but a researcher at Boston Children's Hospital who'd been following our work. "Sarah, I just finished watching your CNN interview. Absolutely brilliant. I wanted to reach out because we have several families here who've been asking about your research." We talked for 20 minutes about the possibility of Boston Children's being one of our Phase 3 trial sites. Having a prestigious hospital like that involved would add significant credibility to our work. "There's something else," Dr. Warren said before we hung up. "I've been asked to put together a panel on rare disease research for the American Medical Association's annual conference. Would you consider being our keynote speaker?" The AMA conference. I dreamed of speaking there someday, but I'd imagined it would be years in the future. Yes, absolutely. Wonderful. The conference is in Chicago in October. We'll cover all your expenses, of course, plus an honorarium. After I hung up, I sat there staring at my phone. 3 months ago, I was just another researcher toiling away in relative obscurity. Now I was being asked to give keynote addresses at major medical conferences. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize with a Washington, D.C. area code. "Dr. Mitchell? This is David Chen from Senator Martinez's office. The senator chairs the Subcommittee on Health Research Funding, and she'd like to invite you to testify before Congress about the importance of rare disease research." I nearly dropped the phone. "Testify before Congress?" "Yes, ma'am. The hearing is scheduled for next month. We believe your work represents exactly the kind of breakthrough that demonstrates why federal research funding is so crucial." Yes, I'd be honored." "Excellent. My colleague will follow up with details about the testimony and travel arrangements." Congress. I was going to testify before Congress. I was starting to wonder if they'd seen any of the coverage when my phone rang with a call from an unknown number. "Dr. Mitchell? This is Janet Rodriguez from the Today Show. We'd love to have you on tomorrow morning to discuss your research." The Today Show. I sat down hard on my couch. Yes, I think that would be possible." "Wonderful. We'll have a producer reach out with details." 3 more interview requests came in over the next hour. Good Morning America. A science podcast with over 1 million subscribers. A documentary filmmaker who wanted to feature our research in a film about medical breakthroughs. But what really overwhelmed me were the personal messages that kept coming in. My email inbox was flooded with messages from families, other researchers, medical professionals, and even some celebrities who had family members with rare diseases. One email particularly moved me. It was from a nurse named Patricia who worked in a pediatric ICU. "Dr. Mitchell, I've been a pediatric nurse for 25 years. I've held too many children as they took their last breaths from diseases we couldn't treat. When I saw your interview this morning, I cried tears of joy thinking about all the children I might get to see go home healthy instead. Thank you for giving me hope in my profession again." Another was from a medical student at Johns Hopkins. "Dr. Mitchell, I'm a third-year medical student, and I've been struggling with whether to go into research or clinical practice. Your work has inspired me to pursue a combined MD/PhD path. You've shown me that research isn't just about publications, it's about changing lives." Around noon, I got a call that made me sit up straight. It was Dr. Francis Collins, the former director of the National Institutes of Health. "Dr. Mitchell, I hope you don't mind me calling directly. I wanted to personally congratulate you on this breakthrough. Dr. Collins, this is such an honor. I've followed your work for years. Well, now I'm following yours. I wanted you to know that your research is exactly the kind of work the NIH is committed to supporting. Have you given any thought to our various research funding opportunities? There are several programs that might be perfect for expanding your work." We discussed potential funding pathways for about 20 minutes. Having someone of Dr. Collins' stature take a personal interest in my research was surreal. "Thank you so much for reaching out, Dr. Collins. This means more than you know." My quiet little research project was becoming a media phenomenon. Around noon, my phone rang with a call I'd been expecting. Mom. Sarah, honey, we just saw you on the television. Which time? I asked, and immediately regretted the sarcastic tone. Don't be smart with me. We had no idea this was such a big deal. I tried to tell you it was important when I called last week. There was a pause. Well, your father and I are very proud of you. Are you? Because last night Emma said my work was just little lab experiments that don't matter to people, and you sat there and said nothing. Another pause, longer this time. Emma was just excited about her own news. You know how she gets. Mom, she deliberately didn't save me a seat at dinner. She made me feel unwelcome in front of strangers, and you watched it happen. Now, Sarah, I'm sure it wasn't intentional. It was absolutely intentional. And you know it. I could hear my father's voice in the background, but I couldn't make out what he was saying. Your father says we should all just put this behind us. Family is family. Is it? Because I don't feel very much like family right now. Sarah Michelle Mitchell, that is enough. We raised you better than to hold grudges. You raised me to stand up for myself, actually. At least, I thought you did. I hung up before she could respond. An hour later, Emma called. Sarah, I owe you an apology. I waited. I had no idea your thing was going to be such a big deal. If I had known, I obviously would have made sure you had a proper seat. My thing? Your research. The treatment thing. Emma, it was a big deal yesterday too. It was a big deal last week when I called Mom and Dad to tell them about it. It was a big deal 3 years ago when I started working on it. Well, I didn't know that. Because you never asked. Because you never listen when I talk about my work. Because you've spent years dismissing everything I do as unimportant. That's not fair. I've always been supportive. You called it little lab experiments last night. In front of your friends. You made me feel like an outsider at a family dinner. I was excited about my promotion. I wanted one night to be about me. It could have been about you, Emma. I would have been happy to celebrate your promotion. But instead, you made it about putting me down. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. You absolutely did mean it. The question is why. She was quiet for a long moment. Look, it's hard sometimes, okay? You're the smart one. You always have been. You got the scholarships, the degrees, the fancy job. And I'm just me. You're my sister. That's not just anything. But it is. And when you called about your research thing and Mom and Dad were so excited, they weren't excited, Emma. They barely listened. Well, they should have been. And I guess I was jealous that you had something so important to be excited about, and all I had was a promotion at a car dealership. It was the most honest thing Emma had said to me in years. Your promotion is important too, I said. I was genuinely happy for you when you told me about it. I know. I know you were. And I'm sorry, Sarah. I really am. I appreciate the apology. But Emma, this isn't the first time. You've been making little digs about my career for years. I know. I'll do better. I hope so. We hung up on a tentative truce. I wasn't sure if Emma really understood how much she'd hurt me, but it was a start. Monday morning came with another wave of media attention. The Today Show interview went live, and within an hour, my phone was ringing off the hook. More interview requests, speaking engagements, and something I hadn't expected, patient advocacy groups reaching out to thank me. A woman named Carol called around 10 a.m. Her 8-year-old daughter had Batten syndrome. Dr. Mitchell, I just wanted to thank you. When we got Lily's diagnosis 2 years ago, the doctors told us to prepare for the worst. But seeing your interview this morning, for the first time in 2 years, I have hope. I was crying by the time she hung up. That's when it really hit me what this meant. This wasn't just about recognition or career advancement. This was about children like Lily, Carol's daughter, who might get to grow up instead of dying before their 10th birthday. Tuesday brought even more media attention. The story had gone viral on social media, with the hashtag Batten breakthrough trending on Twitter. Other researchers were sharing their own rare disease work. Patients and families were sharing their stories. And then, Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang with a call that surprised me. Dr. Mitchell? This is Rebecca Chen from the MacArthur Foundation. I nearly dropped my phone. The MacArthur Foundation. As in, MacArthur Genius Grants. We've been following your work on Batten syndrome treatment for some time now, and we'd like to discuss the possibility of you being considered for future fellowship opportunities. I literally had to sit down on the floor of my lab. Yes, I would be very interested in discussing that. Wonderful. I should mention that our selection process typically takes quite some time and is confidential, but we wanted to reach out to let you know you're on our radar. After I hung up, I sat in my lab for a long time, just processing. 3 days ago, I had been eating pizza alone, watching myself on local news. Now I was potentially being considered for one of the most prestigious recognitions in academia, though I knew the process could take months or even years. I called Marcus to share the news, and he was appropriately excited but realistic about the timeline. Sarah, do you realize what this could mean for the research? Even being considered puts you in an incredibly elite group. But don't get too caught up in it. The MacArthur process is notoriously unpredictable. The possibilities were overwhelming. That evening, I was still at the lab when my phone rang. Mom again. Sarah, we need to talk. About what? About Sunday. About Emma. About everything. I'm listening. Your father and I have been doing a lot of thinking since we saw you on television. And we realized something. I waited. We've been treating you unfairly. For years. I wasn't expecting that. We were so proud of Emma for being normal, for wanting the things we understood, that we didn't know how to be proud of you for being extraordinary. Mom, let me finish. We were intimidated by your intelligence, by your success. We didn't understand your work, so we acted like it wasn't important. But watching you on television, hearing you talk about helping sick children, we realized we've been terrible parents to you. I was crying now, sitting alone in my lab with tears streaming down my face. You haven't been terrible parents. Yes, we have. We let Emma treat you badly because it was easier than dealing with our own feelings of inadequacy. We failed you, Sarah. I love you, Mom. We love you too. So much. And we are so incredibly proud of you. Not just because you're on television, but because you've dedicated your life to helping people. That's who you are, and we should have celebrated that from the beginning. It's not too late. Your father wants to talk to you. Dad's voice came on the line, shaky with emotion. Sarah, I owe you an apology. I've been a fool. Dad, no, let me say this. I taught high school chemistry for 30 years. I spent my career trying to get kids excited about science. And my own daughter becomes a scientist who might save children's lives, and I acted like it didn't matter. It matters to me that you're proud now. I've always been proud. I was just too stupid and stubborn to show it. We talked for another hour. It wasn't a complete fix, years of feeling unsupported don't disappear overnight, but it was a real beginning. Wednesday brought news that the MacArthur Foundation wanted to schedule a formal interview. The Today Show wanted to do a follow-up segment. And most importantly, the NIH announced that our fast-tracked Phase 3 trials would begin in 10 months instead of the originally projected 2.5 years. That afternoon, Emma called. Sarah, can we meet for coffee? I want to talk to you properly. We met at a cafe near my apartment. Emma looked nervous, which was unusual for her. I've been watching all your interviews, she started. Reading the articles about your research. And I finally understand what you do. Like, really understand it. She pulled out her phone and showed me a video. It was a news segment featuring a family with a child who had Batten syndrome. This little boy, Tyler, he's the same age as my Jake. His mom was talking about how they were just waiting for him to die, and then she heard about your research. She said it was the first time in 3 years that she'd felt hope. Emma was crying now. That's what you do, Sarah. You give parents hope that their children might live. And I called it a little lab experiment. Emma, no, let me finish. I need to say this. I've been jealous of you our entire lives. You were always smarter, more accomplished, more everything. And instead of being proud to be your sister, I've spent years trying to make you feel small so I could feel big. I never wanted to make you feel small. I know. That's what makes it worse. You never did anything but support me, and I repaid that by tearing you down. She wiped her eyes with a napkin. I don't know if you can forgive me, but I want to try to be better. I want to be the sister you deserve. You already are, Emma. You're here, aren't you? We hugged across the table, both of us crying into our coffee cups. Can I ask you something? Emma said. Sure. When you were sitting alone eating pizza on Saturday night, did you know about the NIH funding and all the media attention? I had no idea. I thought I was just having a quiet night at home, licking my wounds. And you weren't angry? You didn't order that pizza thinking about revenge or getting back at us? I laughed. Emma, I ordered pizza because I was sad and hungry. The revenge was purely accidental. That somehow makes it even better. Over the next few weeks, things continued to snowball. The MacArthur Foundation had only said I was being considered, and I knew better than to get my hopes up about something so competitive and unpredictable. But the NIH funding was real and substantial, which meant our research would have the support it needed. More importantly, the first patients for our Phase 3 trials were being recruited. Children like Tyler, like Lily that Carol had told me about, would soon have access to a treatment that might save their lives. My relationship with my family was healing too. My parents started asking detailed questions about my work, actually listening to the answers. Emma began following my research updates and sharing them on her social media with genuine pride. My sister is saving lives, she posted on Facebook, along with a link to an article about our trials. I couldn't be more proud. A month after the infamous dinner party, Emma called with an invitation. I'm throwing another dinner party, she said. A proper one this time. Oh? It's a celebration of your MacArthur Fellowship. I've invited the whole family, plus some of our friends who wanted to meet you after seeing you on TV. Emma, you don't have to. I want to. And Sarah, I've set aside the best seat in the house for you. Head of the table, right across from me. The dinner party was wonderful. Emma introduced me to everyone as my sister, the genius scientist, and she clearly meant it. My parents spent the evening telling stories about how smart I'd been as a child, remembering things I'd forgotten myself. But the best moment came when Emma's daughter, Sophie, who was 8 years old, came up to me during dessert. Aunt Sarah, Mommy says you help sick kids get better. I try to, sweetheart. I want to be a scientist like you when I grow up. You can be anything you want to be, Sophie. Will you teach me about science? I looked across the table at Emma, who was beaming with pride. I would love to. As I drove home that night, I thought about how dramatically my life had changed in just a few weeks. The recognition, the funding, the media attention, it was all incredible. But what mattered most was that my family finally understood who I was and what I was trying to accomplish. Sometimes the best revenge isn't planned at all. Sometimes it's just living your life so fully and authentically that the people who tried to diminish you can't help but see how wrong they were. I never did finish that pizza from the night of Emma's first dinner party. But I have a feeling it was the most important meal I never ate. Because while I was sitting alone in my apartment, thinking my work didn't matter to anyone, children and families around the world were about to get news that would change their lives forever. And that's worth more than any seat at any table. The phone calls and interview requests have finally slowed down, but the real work is just beginning. Phase 3 trials start in 3 months. If all goes well, we could have an FDA-approved treatment within 2 years. There are still challenges ahead. Research is unpredictable, and there are no guarantees in medicine. But for the first time in years, I feel like my family is truly behind me, understanding not just what I do, but why it matters. Emma sent me a text yesterday, saw another article about the trials starting soon. So proud to be your sister. I replied, so proud to be yours too. And I meant it. Because at the end of the day, we're family. Even when we fail each other, even when we hurt each other, we're still family. The difference now is that we're choosing to do better. That's the real victory, I think. Not the media attention or the awards or even the breakthrough research. The victory is in choosing to see each other clearly, to support each other genuinely, and to celebrate each other's successes without reservation. It took a national news story for my family to see me, really see me. But now that they do, I don't think they'll look away again. And the next time someone asks me about my little lab experiments, I'll just smile and tell them about Tyler and Emma, and all the other children who might get to grow up because of the work we do in those labs. That's what real achievement looks like. Not a seat at the table, but the knowledge that you've used your gifts to make the world a little bit better. The pizza was excellent, by the way. I highly recommend eating alone sometimes. You never know what might happen while you're discovering how much you enjoy your own company.